Namaste, friends. We welcome you today, 25th August 2024, on another lively episode of Swar-Akshar. Most of you are well aware of our activities. Neeta and I, Shailesh, uh, are active in literature, music in Toronto area for almost 30 years. It has been mainly in Gujarati. However, we do spread our wings in other languages, Hindi, English, a little bit Marathi, coming from Mumbai. So we organize live literary programs, lectures, workshops, poetry readings, and music concerts for years. A small group of art and literature lovers, we used to meet in person once every month and discuss about books, movies, music that we may have come across in our times reading and so on and so forth. And as the world experienced a pandemic, we took Swar-Akshar to a virtual platform in May of 2020. And since then, we are organizing one program every month, not a particular Sunday, but Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we missed recording earlier programs, but since 2022, January, we have recorded all our programs and they are available on our Swar-Akshar YouTube channel. So that's for Swar-Akshar. Housekeeping, very simple. We'll have our guest Salil Bhai talking about his book and few other points that we'll discuss. And at the end of Salil Bhai's talk, we'll open the gallery for questions, Q&A, and request, as always, to keep questions precise to the topic if possible. The feedback or should be also not too long so that we can have a good time with our speaker. So our guest, Salil Tripathi, is a renowned journalist and writer. He is chair of PEN International's Writers in Prison Committee. He's also a contributing editor to the periodicals, The Caravan and Mint. He's a contributing advisor to think tank Bridge India. Salil was born in Mumbai, India, and has traveled around the world for his work. His articles have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Far Eastern Economic Review, the International Herald Tribune, and many other prestigious publications. Salil does not shy away from expressing his views about humanitarian causes. And a result of that, his account was suspended from Twitter. That decision was criticized by Salman Rushdie, Shashi Tharoor, Amitav Ghosh, and many, many more. Salil Tripathi has written 3 books, and the 4th book, Who is a Gujarati Anyway, is soon to be published. Today, he will talk about the book that is sure to appeal equally to Gujaratis and non-Gujaratis. But before you go there, Salil Bhai, we would like to hear about your journey with media that started in infancy of Mumbai Doordarshan, where you conducted programs like Santa Kukri for children, Darshan for youth, and also don't forget to mention about your ties with INT Place for Children.
Yeah, thank you very much. અને બધાને મળીને બહુ આનંદ થયો, પણ મને કહ્યું છે ખાસ કે બને એટલું મારે આજે અંગ્રેજીમાં બોલવાનું, એટલે હું એ જ કરીશ. પણ if anyone wants to ask questions in Gujarati and wants an answer in Gujarati, it's of course possible. કારણ કે I did go to a Gujarati medium school. Those of you who are from Bombay, from Mumbai, will know the school well. New Era, Kemps Corner પર હતી. અને one of the great thing about that school was it had two influences. One was of Gandhiji and the other of Tagore. We were open-minded, as Tagore would walk, where the mind is without fear. એ જાતનો એક attitude. અને બીજું ગાંધીજીનું જે હતું ને કે he would like to keep the doors and windows open, but his feet firmly planted on the ground. એટલે એ જાત bringing એમને થતું હતું અને that was very useful. Theatre was encouraged. અને I did act in some school plays first of all. અને INT માટે તો હું લગભગ 12 વર્ષનો હતો ત્યારે that's when I started. But before that, I had done plays also for Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, acted under Vanlata Mehta, Chandrakant Sangani, Arvind Joshi, all these famous names of Gujarati theatre. And INT, I did children's plays. So things like Bakor Patel, Chakko Mako, Jantar Mantar. If you saw any of those plays in the late 70s or mid 70s, you would have probably seen me acting in those plays. And if you were watching Doordarshan on black and white in Bombay, the television came to Bombay in 1973 with the big TV tower in Worli. So if you watched the television in those days, then around 75 or 76, I started appearing as a host. પહેલા સુહાસબેન અલમોલા હતા, પછી એમની જોડે મેં કર્યું ને પછી હું એકલો આવતો હતો ને પછી મારી જ સ્કૂલની એક મારી મિત્ર છે પૌલા મરીવાલા, and she and I started doing those programs in Gujarati in Santa Kukdi, which were basically again similar to those who grew up in Bombay. Hindi નું ખેલ ખિલોને હતું, મરાઠીમાં કિલબિલ હતું ને ઇંગ્લિશમાં મેજિક લેમ્પ હતું. એટલે એ જાતનો પ્રોગ્રામ હતો. We would do quizzes and game shows and sometimes interviews with prominent people. And later, once I was in my older teens, around 17, 18, I started doing Yuva Darshan, which also had quizzes and debates all the time. And one of the highlights was that I interviewed Iqbal Qasim, the Pakistani cricketer, in Gujarati, because he could speak Gujarati well. And he was in India in 1978 with the cricket team. And so it was him and Adam Sumro, who was a well-known Gujarati journalist in Pakistan. So yeah, did things like that and stayed active. That is how the media journey started.
And now definitely we would like to hear your journey with your book.
Yeah, sure. So I did, the first book I did was on free speech and Hindu nationalism. Then I did a book of travel essays. And then I did a book on Bangladesh. So the publisher who published the Bangladesh book is David Devidar, and he runs a company called Aleph. And he got in touch with me because he has started this series of books on various Indian communities. So the first one was about to come out on the Bengalis, which was written by Sudeep Chakravarti. And he asked me that, what would you do if I were to want a book on Gujaratis? How would you approach it? And I was completely unprepared for that question. And I was sitting with him in his office. My older son was with me in the room. We were visiting Delhi. And my older son at that time was 25. He's a little older now. So I started telling him, about what being a Gujarati meant to me, how there are cliches about Gujaratis which need to be challenged, how there are redeeming virtues about Gujaratis, how there are abhorrent vices of Gujaratis. And I started narrating them, and it was very stream of consciousness. There was no coherent thought, but I was talking about food, I was talking about diaspora, I was talking about money, I was talking about trade, all kinds of issues. And when I did all that, he had to go out to take a call. And when he went out to take a call, my son Udayan told me, "Dad, I want to read this book." I said, "Okay, that's good to know. Now let's see if he wants to publish it." And then David comes back and says, "You don't have to tell me more. The book is yours. Take your time to write it, but don't take too long." He gave me a deadline of 2 to 3 years. I took 7 to 8 years in the end. Because what happened was that not only did I travel a lot in Gujarat for the book, but I wrote a lot about Gujaratis in Bombay, but also spoke to a lot of people some of whom are on this call, Amrit Bhai and Pannaben Jode par main vato kareli, and about over 200 interviews of famous people, not so famous people. Most of them are named. Some of them don't want to be named, so I've not named them. And, diaspora is an interesting thing because, no publisher has a huge budget. I can't expect that Gujarati to બધે જ છે ને જ્યાં વસે તે Gujarati, ત્યાં સદાકાળ ગુજરાત. એટલે I can't expect that the publisher will send me to every country where there are Gujaratis. Otherwise, I'll have to go to all the 210 countries in the world. So but I've been lucky enough, as you know, Shailesh bhai just said, that, I've been traveling a lot over the years, and I've written about the Indian communities abroad, and often I've met Gujaratis abroad. And fortunately, I have published a lot of these things already as articles or kept notes and all that. So I kept going back to that. And so some of it is remembered, encounters. And so I mean, when I'm not accurate, I've not put it in quote marks, but in indirect speech and all that. It doesn't look as though I'm making things up, nor does it look dishonest. That's the way the writing craft of that has happened. And it's in, the book is in, I think, 88 chapters, but I mean, it's about 8 to 10 parts mainly. It deals with the way we eat, the way we earn, the way we learn, the way we create, the way we pray, the way we play, the way we blend, the way we love, and the way we kill. બધા પર એટલે it's got the good, the bad, and the ugly aspects of Gujarati. Everything is in it, yeah.
So again, when you came up with the idea, or however it came into place, I'm thinking, how did you put all together? I mean, in the sense that, in the book, you must have had chapters on different people, different way of life, people living in different country. How, because this is, as you said, this is a huge subject in a way. So if you can
there's an introductory part. I mean, I can read parts of that in a while, but there's an introductory part. From that, I go into the various communities, because my editor was very keen that who is a Patel, who is a Parsi, who is a Muslim, who is a Bora, who is a Nagar, who is a Dalit. And so there is a section about that too. Then there is history, and I go back very far. I go back to Dholavira and Lothal, actually, because that's where the history of Gujarat starts, really. And then I talk about the Solanki Yug, then I talk about the attack on Somnath and the mythology around that, and how that has shaped our identity, and how Munshi has created a particular way of looking at Gujarati character and attitudes. Then I go into the Maratha period, the Sultans, and then the influence of the Marathas, and then the British. And then the separation, the very bitter separation of Gujarat and Maharashtra, where the flight over Bombay became very big. Then there are 4 or 5 city profiles, short profiles, 4 city profiles: Baroda, Ahmedabad, Surat, and Bombay, which are large cities where Gujaratis tend to live. And then I go into the communities. Then I go into where we have lived. So there is a section on Singapore and Burma. There's a section on East Africa, Southern Africa, Belgium, so Antwerp and diamonds, London, US and North America. So, I mean, and there are references to places like Fiji. And I mean, I wish I could write more about New Zealand and Australia. I've written about people who live there by quoting them. That I've done, but I've not been able to. I mean, I've been to Australia, but I've never been to New Zealand. So but New Zealand is very interesting because, their cricket team, their hockey team has had Gujarati players. Deepak Patel and Ramesh Patel. Ramesh Patel was in hockey. Deepak Patel was in the cricket team. And there are a couple of very fine academics there. Shuchi Kothari lives in New Zealand. She's done a lot of good work on Fiji. And those of you who have seen Nandita Das's film Firat, its script was written by Shuchi Kothari. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were wondering, I mean, everybody, like when we use the word Gujarati, people think whether it is a region, whether it is a religion, whether it is a language. So how did you focus on? How did you make that decision?
I've been a bit imperialistic here in the sense that I've taken the view that anybody whose life is touched by Gujarati culture is Gujarati. So whether you live in Gujarat or not, or you are a Gujarati living elsewhere, whether in India or not, you basically are someone from Gujarat or of Gujarat. And that includes caste, it includes religions, it includes everything, literally. I've written about prominent Marathi people, who are Gujaratis. I mean, Ganesh Devi is one example. Purushottam Mavlankar is another. And his father, Ganesh Mavlankar, was the first speaker of the Indian Lok Sabha. He was, I mean, Marathi, but from Gujarat, but he was Gujarati. Sanjay Bhave, Sachin Ketkar are two very fine critics and writers who are also Marathi origin, but they are Gujaratis in my book, and because they're flawless in their Gujarati. And they think, breathe, live, and eat Gujarati. So how can they not be called? So when I was writing it, I still remember one prominent journalist in Bombay. She's a very well-known columnist, but I don't name her because I don't want to embarrass her. She actually asked me, ke, oh, so it'll all be about business and a dhando. I said, yeah, business will be part of it. So she said it will be about Ambani, Adani, and Mafatlal. I said, yeah, but also about Azim Premji and Tatas. She said, Tatas are not Gujarati. I said, Tatas are Gujarati. So she said, no, they are Parsis. I said, so do you mean to say that Gujarati is a religion? She said, no, but Gujaratis are Hindu. I said, then what do you make of Azim Premji? And I said, GM Banatwala, what do you make of or Yusuf Meher Ali, who created Quit India and Simon Go Back slogans? They were all Gujaratis. So she said, this is interesting if Tata see themselves as Gujaratis. I said, look, I can tell you one thing. If you go to Bombay House, which is the headquarters of Tata, you'll see 3 newspapers, on the main reception desk. One is Jame Jamshed, which is Gujarati. The other is Mumbai Samachar, which is Gujarati. And the third is Times of India.
Right.
You go in the elevator in the building, in Tata's building, there are South Indians there who have learned to speak Parsi style Gujarati because a lot of their colleagues there are Parsis and Gujaratis. So yes, I do. So I'm not trying to be, if tomorrow Mr. Tata says, no, I'm not Gujarati, I'm something else, that is his choice. I'm not going here to ascribe identities onto anybody. But to deny that is also wrong. That's my point. And that brings me to the cliches, which we know that all Gujaratis are business-minded and money-oriented. But there are lots of Gujaratis who've taken enormous sacrifices and work for the downtrodden. And I'm not just talking about Ravi Shankar Maharaj, all other social workers, Thakkar Bapa, and so on. But if you look at New York, where I live, the Taxi Drivers Alliance, the union is run by Bhairavi Desai, who's Gujarati. The first ever major strike in England that took place from colored people, non-white people, was again by Jayaben Desai, and she was also Gujarati. And she fought against a particular photo development company. If you remember in the past, we would come back from a trip, take our camera roll, airport પર પેલું envelope આવે એમાં you મૂકી દો અને £5 નો check ભરી દેવાનો and you send it, and 5 days later you'll get an album with your photograph. So there was this photo labs, and there the workers were largely Gujarati East African women who had come from Uganda and Kenya, and they were treated very badly by the employer, who was an Anglo-Indian. And there was a months-long strike against that. It was a very, very well-known episode in British trade union politics. So, but the woman who led it was a 4 feet nothing or 5 feet 2 inches type short woman in sari fighting that battle, Jayaben. So that is that story. So that challenges the notion that every Gujarati who goes abroad is there only to make money. Secondly, vegetarianism, if you look at the statistics, apparently 60% of Gujaratis say they are vegetarian, but there's a lot of concealment going on. If we look at the coast, Gujarat is the largest coast in India. There are fishing communities, there are Dalits, there are Muslims, there are Parsis, there are Rajputs, there are Patels, many of them do eat meat. There are other Hindus, upper caste Hindus also, who quietly eat meat. Ratna, Patiara Gali, and they would quietly have, and not let the family know. Why is Ahmedabad full of these carts everywhere where people are making egg omelets? Whether eggs are meat or not can be a philosophical question. But that's because they cannot do it at home. So they quietly come out, eat the egg, then they eat a pan so that, the smell is hidden when they get home again, so that the parents or whoever won't find out that they've gone and eaten omelets outside. So there's a lot of concealment of that. So there is a kind of practical outlook of keeping two worlds apart and not getting confused with it is also a very common trait. And the third is, and the third trait that we always talk about is that because we cite Mahatma Gandhi and say that, we are non-violent, but Gujarat has had extremely terrible riots. And I'm not only talking about 2002, but if you go back, there was 1984, 85, 86, 82, then you go back to 1969, 1940s, 1920s, and 1890s. There are periodic eruptions of the first early riots were actually between Parsis and Muslims. Then there have been riots between Hindus and Muslims and upper caste and lower caste periodically. So to say that, there's a very nice thing that Madhav Singh Solanki, who was the former chief minister of Gujarat, had once told me, and I quoted him in the book. And he told this to me in 1986 when I wrote an article about violence in Gujarat. And he said that I just, not innocently, but deliberately, provocatively, I asked him that, why is it that we are the land of Gandhi and we have so much violence? કે આપણે તો હંમેશા હિંસક હતા, આપણને શાંત કરવા આપણને ગાંધીજીની જરૂર પડી. Which means that we were always violent. To calm us down, we needed a Gandhi. And it's worth introspecting and reflecting on that, what he gets at, because I think there's a lot of truth in it. There is a lot of violence. And you can see it in terms of the way Dalits were treated in Una. You can see it in the way, even the non-physical violence, you have a residential colony and a Muslim or a meat eater wants to come and everybody gangs up saying, no, you cannot come in this territory. So there's a lot of bullying that goes on routinely. And so, yeah, I'm going to show everything, warts and also the nice smelling roses.
It's very interesting, Salil bhai, as you're talking about your journey writing the book and all the aspects of it. In fact, between Neeta and I are, how are we going to navigate the questions? Because, but we are going to go, it may go from one to the other end because it's such a wide and wild subject, if I may say so. So I want to go back to your initial statement you made about you went back to Harappa, Lothal, and so on and so forth. So can you talk a little bit about your research journey, and that would encompass everything, right from India to all over the world that you went.
Yeah. So Lothal was easy. I had been there again in 1986, so I had notes from that. And there was a very fine historian who Amrit Bhai would remember, Virchand Dharamsi. He had done a very good book on the early history and looking at what was going on about the Shilalekh બધા જે જોવા મળતા હતા અને કઈ રીતે આખી the whole history of India was being constructed by an amateur kid who went on to become a very fine historian. So I've relied on secondary research like that. On history, for example, the medieval period, Samira Sheikh, Aparna Kapadia, they have written very good books. On the migration and patterns, Farhana Ibrahim and Rita Kothari have written very good. So I read about more than 150 books in the last 7-8 years working on this. And many of us know Vipul Bhai very well, Vipul Bhai Kalyani in London. He was extremely helpful in giving me references about Gujaratis in Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa, who to meet, who to talk to. And many of these conversations were on phones. Sometimes they were questions sent to them, received from them. I would meet up with people. So, if you want to know about Gujaratis in East Africa, a wonderful man to ask is Mahmood Mamdani, who is an anthropologist. And he teaches at Columbia, but also at the Makerere University, and he has been in South Africa as a professor. And so he told me about the sayings, and I read a lot of literature about it also. So M.G. Vasanji, of course, has written the Book of Secrets, which is a very good novel about Pipo, Karinek Manasato, Kachi in Uganda, but, in Tanzania, I'm sorry. But there is also a very funny book, quite vicious, but early novel by Paul Thoreau called Fong and the Indians. Now, Fong was this Chinese trader in East Africa, in the Rift Valley. And he was surrounded by these very crafty Indian traders who drive him out of business. And, it also shows we always praise the Gujarati businessman who goes abroad. But there's a very nice, funny story, and it's an old joke, actually, which the Tanzanian Gujaratis told a Dutch academic called Gisbert Unk, and which is this joke probably everybody knows, so it's not important, but the message from that is important, that there is a Gujarati and a Dutchman, or a German, let's say, who go to Nairobi, and they're both going to trade in the countryside, and they're both carrying their little rucksacks. And there are lions in the jungle, And suddenly they hear the lion. As soon as the lion, you can hear the lion, the Gujarati takes out his Nike sneakers and puts them on. So he says, you can't outrun the lion. So he says, no, but I only have to outrun you, is what he tells the Dutch guy. And so the point that the Gujaratis who told the story to Mr. Unk, Professor Unk, was exactly this, that Gujarati is willing to help out the rival, but not with all the information of risk, because he keeps some information to himself. He knows that it is survival of the fittest. He also knows that he cannot, if both of them have shoes, the Dutch being stronger and burlier will win. So he has to keep that strategic advantage to himself. And very importantly, Gisbert Unk writes in his, he gave a lecture in London, which I'd heard in 2013 or so at the SOAS. And he said at that time that the most important point is that there are no Africans in the story. And there's another very good aspect about it, that there was a British governor of Bombay who was very surprised to see so many Gujaratis in Zanzibar. And he asked them, "Tame loko અહીંયા ક્યાંથી આવ્યા?" So, oh, you are the go-betweens for us, between us and the Africans. So the Kutchi trader apparently told him that, Nana, you are the go-betweens for us to reach out the world markets. And that's exactly what happened, that basically the Gujarati trader rode on the coattails of the East India Company. So the good part is that you had all these shroffs and moneylenders and traders all over, basically from, Aden to Sumatra, Hong Kong, they were all there. I mean, that was the good part. The bad part is that we were also complicit in partly in the slave trade, but also in the selling of opium to China, because most of the opium that was sold to China came from Malwa, and that was coming from Gujarati and Hindu and Parsi and Jain traders. And that's been very well recorded. I mean, people have been given knighthoods for their services to the empire. At one time, I think there were 60 Indian companies which were doing trade in opium, and out of them were 40 to 45 were Gujarati owned. And that started the opium war and all the rest that follows from that. So yeah. So it's a very, very checkered and interesting history.
Yeah, just now you mentioned, Salil Bhai, I'm just going to pick a question from that statement of yours. Gujaratis and concealment, they go hand in hand. And they like to hide or hold back to some information, whatever it is, whether it is sharing a recipe or sharing motu kai, that is if world class kai hoy topan. So how did you find when you had to get some information? What was your challenge of getting out the information and actual things, not just bragging, listening to the bragging stories?
Yeah. So bragging always happens. Whatever you do, people basically tell you this tried and tested story, right? That Ame you keep saying, but then you gradually introduce an idea that contradicts it. That તમે આમ કહો છો, પણ મેં તો આવું સાંભળ્યું છે, so what about this in that case? And then they start opening, and then you always ask them to give examples. See, people like to make generalizations. We are vegetarian, or we are non-violent, or we believe in God. Then you start asking them the question, yes, what about this? And that makes them open up, and then ask them for concrete examples. And once that happens, the stories start flowing much more easily. And it's possible, frankly, in face-to-face meetings. It's a bit hard on Zoom interviews. So a lot of the good quality interviews I've had are those which were over 2 or 3 meetings with people. I mean, a lot of people who are quoted a lot in the book, Tridip Surud and Urvish Kothari and Rita Kothari and Ganesh Devi and Martin McQuan, I've met them repeatedly, over the last 6-7 years, and had conversations with them. And trust also gets built. And, you tell them that, look, I'm going to use this. If they say that you can't use this part, or you don't put it in my words, or don't put it in my mouth, that's fine. I'll respect that. I mean, this is not a gotcha moment to catch out somebody at all. And also what's ethically sound is that because some interviews were taken a long time ago, I'm very happy to tell the person that, look, this is what we spoke then. 3 years have passed. Has your mind changed? And very often it hasn't. I mean, they would probably, want to suggest a few things here and there, which updated with more recent insights or statistics. Yeah.
Yeah, so do you mean to say that people take pride in the same thing? કે હવે આપણે કહો કે fathers of two nations ગુજરાતી એ લોકોની માતૃભાષા હતી, and then two prime ministers of India spoke Gujarati as their mother tongue. So all those things they take pride about, but the same things they contradict at different levels. So how would you, when you put down in your book or when you put out your thoughts, and you have worked with internationally with other communities as well, how would you compare that to what Gujarati said and how you put it in your book?
So one thing I've told everyone from the start is that I'm the outsider looking in and insider looking out. So I don't go by saying that, I know everything, because that puts people on the defensive. When I was a very young reporter and I would go and interview people in my 20s, if somebody started telling me what I already knew, I would say, yes, I know, but tell me this. And what that typically did was it put the person I was interviewing on a defensive, because they felt that આ તો બધું જાણે છે એટલે આપણે જરા કન્સીલ કરવું પડશે, or we'll have to be more careful. Instead, always act as though you don't know anything. And I learned this from a British journalist called Trevor Fishlock. I was 23 or 24, and I was a fixer for him, in the sense that he was representing the Daily Telegraph, and he was in Bombay for 4 days, and he wanted to meet certain people, and I'd helped arrange his meetings and so on. And he's an old friend, so I was happy to do that. So I remember we meant to meet somebody, and this was when Bal Thackeray was alive. I'm talking about mid-80s, early to mid-80s. Bal Thackeray was a big force, and Datta Samant was also probably very active at that time. So we went to meet somebody, and he had been the correspondent for the London Times in Delhi for some years. So he knew a little bit of Hindi as well. But we went to interview somebody, and I don't know who it was. It was, I think, a Bollywood person. And that I can't even remember if it was actor or actress, but they started talking in extremely simplistic ways, explaining, India, as though they were talking to somebody who was completely new. And Trevor kept taking notes, yes, and nodding and all that. And later when we had lunch, I said, why were you doing that? You knew all that. He said, yeah, but I was just waiting for that person to slip up, thinking I'm stupid, because then they will say something stupid themselves, which will give me what I want. So I'm not saying that I'm playing a game there, but it always helps to let someone, whenever someone says, as you know, I will always say, no, I don't, tell me more about it. I don't know about it. And so revealing less about yourself is not an act of concealment on my part, but I want to hear their story. It's not about me, it's about them.
So I'm going to go back a little bit. You did touch a bit of where I'm going to go, the question. Those early days, starting in Doordarshan at such a young age, how did all of those experiences, including your work as a journalist and so on and so forth, how did it help get to the book and write the book? So
I think that, when you interview people, and when you're a young interviewer, you know very little, right? So you start with from a position of wanting to learn more, curiosity and quizzing as in not in quiz competition, but asking more and more questions. And always begin with the assumption that you don't know everything. And I've learned so, when I started writing the book, honestly, I thought I'll be able to finish it within 1 or 2 years. Because I thought, what is there? I've been to a Gujarati medium school. I have some interesting family ties with Gujarat's history. So I should be able to, put it together in no time. And, I'll speak to 10, 15 people. And I was talking to somebody else who was writing a similar book on another community. And when 3 years went and I hadn't written a last sentence, he said, oh, I'm about to finish. And why is it taking you so long? He said, I'm still, trying to understand. And I've learned so much. Writing this book. There are vast parts of how complicated the history of Somnath is, for example, and what we were told by the Charan, Bhat, by the balladeers, Songsma, and the gates of Somnath and the history. And then you read a book by Romila Thapar, who actually examines this in great detail and finds out where the gaps are. And she doesn't say that the history is wrong. She only says that these are the gaps which we don't know about, and therefore we cannot make the assumption that this is how the story happened, because stories are always complicated. They are never beginning, middle, and end. I mean, some stories continue to go on and proceed. So I mean, I think that attitude of, trying to listen, trying to be curious, trying to understand more, and that itself takes you to direction that otherwise you would not go, thinking that we know everything. And I think this is not a criticism of particularly of Indian journalists, but many journalists tend to think, I mean, I've seen that particularly on the television, less so in print media, that they know everything. And they want to outshout the other person, and they want to speak over them, control the microphone and all that. And, I do these literary conversations many times for Penn, for example. I've done with Damon Galgut, done with Elif Shafak, I've done it with Salman Rushdie. People who are signing on to these programs do it because they want to listen to them, not to me. And I think that's very important to bear in mind, that who they've come for. And respect that, and let them listen to those writers and not to what I have to say.
Yeah, that was a great thing. I mean, I think people should learn that more. This is just a comment, and we are trying to do that. And friends who are with us on this platform, I'll just take one moment here that please don't blame us. Please don't shoot the messengers every time. We tell them every time this thing that Tamaru Bolvanu, please keep yourself to the minimum and listen to the speaker. Thank you very much for just, putting the nail on that so that we can use you now. That, okay, Salil Bhai said that, so remember that.
So coming back to the book itself, and if you can give us a little bit of a glimpse in terms of, I know you have different chapters on you briefly mentioned, but give us a little bit more about it, and if you can read a passage or so.
I think it's a very complicated structure, so I don't want to itemize all the 88 chapters because we'll be here for the next 4 hours in that case. So what I'll do is I'll read. I've taken out a few extracts which I will read from, and I'll start with one and then maybe another one which is towards the conclusion, because it deals with Asmita. So yeah. So this is the opening prologue, and it's called Aavo Mari Sathe.
Oh, great, Adi Marzban.
Absolutely, that's the reference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aavo Mari Sathe. So you want to know about us, the Gujaratis. Aavo, beso, shu lesho, thandu garam, nasto pani. You want to know who we are, what has made us the way we are, and you wonder why we act the way we do. You know quite a bit about us already, and you probably have strong opinions about us. That we are vegetarian, and we are supposed to be clever at making money. We are practical and pragmatic. We murder the finest cuisines in the world by adding sugar and Amul cheese to everything, transforming Punjabi, Chinese, and Italian food into concoctions that Punjabis, Chinese, or Italians would instantly disown. When we travel, we expect to eat dokla and gathia in Amritsar, Shanghai, or Rome. We generously share our snacks, which we pronounce as snakes. And we have food taboos that would exasperate our hosts, such as no onion and garlic on Friday. Puri is only made from amaranth flour during the monsoon month of Shravan. Many of us piously say we are vegetarian, and then late evening, when our family is glued to Arnab Goswami on television, we tiptoe out and visit the hawker's cart down the alley to eat omelets. The more adventurous among us even develop a taste for kebabs. And we bury its taste by chewing pan before returning home, so that nobody can suspect our postprandial indiscretions. And we break into Garba at the slightest pretext. Garba has near religious significance. What goes around comes round doesn't always mean karma. For us, it means Garba. You may not know us, our poets and writers, because you think that the only book we care about is the ledger. We are obsessed with success, which we feel can be measured objectively only through money. Paiso bole che. We know that money talks. Even at funerals, you might find some men discussing stock market prices while looking suitably gloomy, randomly folding their hands and doing namaste when someone passes by. We can walk into a restaurant and brazenly ask for 1 cup of tea and 3 saucers, which the friends accompanying us will share. We buy a newspaper for 4 rupees and 8 of us will pass it around between us because making paisa vasool is our birthright. Some of us are known to haggle with the hapless call center employee for 1 hour to make on the phone to get 20 rupees refunded. You smirk at our meticulous planning, but entrust the logistics of organizing complex events to us. You find it hilarious that we wave the tricolor vigorously, but rarely join the army. Actually, some of us do. If you call us cowards, we point at the man whose photograph is on all the currency notes of India except the old 1 rupee one, Mohandas Gandhi, and claim we are non-violent. And as with all such unjustified insults, we will see that there's more than enough valor among Gujaratis. As to non-violence, that's another story altogether. And we periodically erupt into gruesome violence, massacring hundreds of our own. In India alone, there are some 55 million people who consider Gujarati to be their mother tongue, at approximately 5% of the population. And possibly there are 6 million more of us abroad, on every continent, if not every country. 1 out of every 3 Indians abroad is supposed to be a Gujarati. In a video that has gone viral on the internet among Gujaratis, several leading actors recite verses from a poem by the popular raconteur Sairam Dave, in which one performer says that just as there is no ocean without fish, there is no country in the world without a Gujarati. But there are exceptions within us. Not all of us are vegetarians. Indeed, one of our most comprehensive surveys in Gujarat ever undertaken showed increased meat consumption. Only 76 of the 300 Gujarati communities surveyed by the Anthropological Survey of India in the 1980s said they ate only vegetarian food, a substantially higher proportion than the national average of 16%. But some 130 communities, or nearly half, said they ate meat occasionally. Not all of us are good at making money either, and the long list of corporate scandals shows not all Gujarati business people are necessarily ethical. Nor are all of us Gandhian ascetics. Many of us love our gold and diamonds. The fancy jewelry shops at Zaveri Bazaar at Opera House has many Gujarati owners, Gujarati staff, and patrons who are Gujarati. We have run motels in America, fought apartheid in South Africa, been expelled from Uganda, formed trade unions in London, sold opium to China, financed Subhash Chandra Bose's Indian National Army in Southeast Asia. We dominate the list of India's wealthiest, and yet our poor break ships and clean drains. Hospitable yet calculating, mercantile and pragmatic, pious and yet tolerating violence. Worldly wise while claiming to be spiritual, cheerful and transactional. We see nothing wrong with any of these contradictions. In the 1970s and 80s, Adi Mazban, the famous Parsi theatre director, who also edited his family newspaper Jame Jamshed, hosted an extremely popular television show in Gujarati in Bombay. It had humorous gags, magic tricks, musical performance, skits, jokes, and homilies that never failed to entertain. Avo Mari Sathe, it was called. Come with me. And come with me too, I say, as I explore the complexities of my people, how we earn, how we politic, how we create, how we pray, how we give, how we eat, how we play, how we love, and how we kill.
This is amazing. I don't have any words the way you put it together. Oh my God. So we kind of got the glimpses of the book. One question about the writing when you in fact started with Avo Mari Sathe. So my question may be a little bit on the technical side, that there are so many, well, a book about Gujaratis and without Gujarati words that cannot be complete. How is it received and perceived with the audience, or what do you, the second question is what do you keep in mind? Do you think about your audience or the readers, and how does the editor would take it? So everything in.
So I've translated almost everything that I use. So Avo Mari Sathe, I would immediately say, come with me. But I would not put it in a bracket or something like. There are also certain other things which, because I've lived abroad now for about 30 something years, I was explaining some very simple thing like, pulao, I would say, so I would say rice pilaf with peas and carrots. So he cut out all of that. He said, you don't need to tell this to Indian reader, put it in your Western edition. So whenever I come around to do my next edition of this, which will be for the foreign audiences, it will be like that. So there's some of that I've done. I've kept the Gujarati words in. There are lots of Gujarati poems, not prose pieces, because I think it's technically it's very hard to print a piece in Gujarati, like, let's say a paragraph, then to transliterate it and then to do a translation takes up too much space. But there are lots of, like, all the famous poems that you can think of, Niranjan Bhagat ni kavitao છે, Suresh Dalal, Suresh Joshi, Sitanshu Yashas Chandra Pannaben, Pratishtha Pandya, Swarup Dhruv, Badani, there's a lot, and even Jayesh Solanki, a lot of poems are referred to, and even the past ones, so Khabardar and Narmad and all of them. So the line would be there, and then there would be some way it would be translated. Uma Shankar comes a lot. I've quoted Uma Shankar Joshi a lot. So, but that's the way I've approached the language. And when I was writing it, there were about 8 or 10 keen readers who have read bulk of the book, either chapters or at least 2 or 3 friends have read all of it in various draft forms. So I'm very grateful to them. But when I did that with them, they would tell me that, they would ask, what does this mean? Because not all of them are Gujaratis. And I've had great help from one particular editor and fact checker within my publishing company, Vidisha. And she was incredibly good in tracking down original research material, questioning something I've got, say that you have written this from this book, when was it published? Because I can't find it in the National Library in Delhi, kind of thing. So I mean, it takes a village to write a book. So this is a big that.
And I definitely would say that this book of yours will help Gujaratis who don't read, write, speak Gujarati, but they want to understand what a Gujarati is. Not necessarily the next generation. Maybe there are people who have been away from Gujarat for a long time and they want to know their roots or whatever it is.
Also within India, because, my brother is a playwright and actor in Bombay. And he tells me that, when he writes a play script now, he has to write it in English script, even if the dialogue is in Gujarati. And his actors are also Gujarati, but they can't read the script because they've been to English medium schools. They can speak it, they can understand it, but they can't read the script. So there is that part to it also, that, to make it more accessible is vitally important. And I mean, I would like it to be translated, and there are a couple of people interested in it. So I'll see. Translated in Gujarati too, so that it is read in Gujarati by people who can read and understand Gujarati. Yeah.
Exactly. No, and I definitely, and you said many people have read it and given.
Many, 7 or 8 people.
Yeah. So, I mean, whosoever, maybe or whosoever is your, whosoever you thought are okay to read it, or they should be reading it to give you the feedback about it.
All those who knew more about Gujarat than I did, let's put it that way.
Right. So do you know, I mean, did you see anybody who could just see it objectively, who is not a Gujarati or not from Gujarat or not from Mumbai or those 4 cities you said? And what was their take on that?
They were very good in telling me that this is way too detailed, take it out. I mean, my editor was very good about it, because he said that my first draft was about 1,200 pages. What's coming out now is about 700 pages. So, substantial parts have been removed from the book, quite rightly, because otherwise it was fluffy and repetitive and all that. And so that's inevitable when you work on something for 7 or 8 years.
Would you like to read something about, I mean, any other excerpts so that we would know?
Yeah, I think the section on Lambo, I'll just see if I can.
And as
what I will do is I will tell the story very quickly. I won't. So there's a big chapter on Asmita. What is the meaning of Asmita? And everyone talks about, identity. And so I've moved from how the notion of Asmita has moved from identity to arrogance. And in that, I've said that actually the generosity which we talk about often comes from the poorest people. So I won't read out the part because it's a bit long, but I'll read out the conclusions. So Ravi Shankar Maharaj, there was a book called Maharajna Mukh and Biji Vato, which was published by Sahitya Parishad in 2007 when it turned 100. And it was about Ravi Shankar Maharaj and when he was doing the Bhudan movement. And when he was in a village, suddenly an old woman came to him and said that I want to give my goat. Or you do take only land? He said, I will take a goat. See, I've got 6 goats. I don't need 1 goat. And she was very poor herself. Then later in the afternoon, she came back and said that I also want to give a room because I have a room and the goats used to live in the room, but now the goats can roam outside and I can give a room to somebody who needs it. So he said, do you know anybody? So she says, yeah, ek Ravaniyo chhe. And that's that so-called denotified tribe, and therefore people don't like to give them space or land, the upper castes. So she called, so Ravi Shankar Maharaj called the Ravanya bhai ne बोला उन्हें पूछ के, will you do this? So he said, but you'll have to keep it clean. I will keep it clean. Then he said that, okay, but you will also have to look after her till, she's around. So she said, no, I don't want anything from him. I'm doing it to him because I have a spare room. I don't need it. So I'm giving it to him. And I want it in writing that after I'm gone, nobody should evict him from that room. And then Ravi Shankar Maharaj has tears in his eyes. Says, okay, what was this? What brought her to do this? And this is Gujarati Asmita for me. And so I think that is a very vital. That's where I'm ending the narrative part. But now I'll just read out my final conclusion about it. Asmita depends on the context. Tridip Surud told me when we met at his office at the Sabarmati Ashram, where for 5 years he had been the director and an archivist. Pride is fine, but is arrogance part of that pride? Identity is great to have, but does it lead to narrowness and does it create otherhood? Consciousness is desirable, but does it make you self-righteous? And conscience, is it exclusionary or inclusive? My uncle Kulit Chandra Yagnik retired as Gujarat's education secretary in 1985 and was later the founding vice chancellor of the new university set up in Patan. Sitting on his creaking old swing at his home in Nadia, the 95-year-old Yagnik told me, I would view the past or even Asmita as the rear view mirror of the car. It is extremely essential in the car, and it is good to look at it from time to time, but only for brief glances. If you're lucky, it helps you to be sure that the past won't overtake you. Otherwise, it can become an obstacle in your future. If you look back and forward, you miss the landscape around you. During one of our conversations in Ahmedabad, Ghanshyam Shah, the sociologist, told me, we establish family norms and expect others to obey based on literature from books like Saraswati Chandra, which has imposed rules about what our joint family should be like. But it is a specific view set in a particular time. Asmita is not static, it changes. It is our construct, and we construct it differently for each home. If you don't find an answer to your question, about what is Asmita? He told me, that's fine. That itself is an answer. To say that there's only one answer for everything is wrong. We have to celebrate our plurality. As I continued my journey in the land which was mine and not yet mine, I kept asking myself, whose Asmita was I talking about? How was it even possible to construct one unifying identity of such a disparate group of people? We shared a language, but we also spoke other languages. We shared a space, but we also lived far beyond. By turning Asmita into a majoritarian construct, we diminished it, hollowed it, enfeebled it. We glorified dominant virtues instead of taking delight in a broader reality. We assumed that what applied to a few applied to the many, ignoring the exceptions that enrich our language and our people. There are endless Asmitas, Shuchi Kothari told me. She is a Gujarati who grew up in Ahmedabad, studied in the US, and now lives in New Zealand. She's a screenwriter whose credits include Nandita Das's haunting film about the violence of 2002, Firak. She said, Gujarati Asmita matra ek nathi, jetla Gujarati che etli Asmita che. Gujarat doesn't have one Asmita, as many Asmitas as there are Gujaratis. Sushma Iyengar, who has worked among the Maldhari community in Kutch, the nomadic community, had told me, when we opened our economy, we lost our sense of guilt and humility. It got overlaid with ethnocentric pride, which has become our Asmita, and we lost our simplicity. The Gujarati poet Umashankar Joshi titled one of his poems Vishwamanav, a nod to the universalism inherent in human beings, acknowledging the streams of influences that have enriched our identity. He asks in one of his poems, Evo te kevo Gujarati, je ho keval Gujarati. What kind of a Gujarati is a mere Gujarati? Those lines were in the same spirit of what Rudyard Kipling, the English writer born in India and who lived many years in Vermont, and had seen England from the outside and from within said, "What do they know of England who only England know?" Or the Marxist Caribbean scholar, C.L.R. James, who drew on that and said, "What do they know of cricket who only cricket know?" Kipling saw races as apart and was a champion of the empire. James saw the folly of the empire and saw in the desire to excel at cricket a keenness among the colonies to get the empire to see them as equals. Troubled by the narrowness and xenophobia latent within the nationalistic ideas, Rabindranath Tagore wrote essays on nationalism, published during the First World War, warning societies of the dangers of clinging to constricted identities. That made Tagore Vishwamana, the man of the world, or what the Indonesian writer Pramodya Anantatur calls Anak Samua Bangsa, the child of all nations. Indeed, what kind of a Gujarati is a mere Gujarati? Narsi Mehta had spread his arms wide to welcome everyone, and he went and lived in Dalit communities. Narmad looked at the sheer expanse and put markers. Govardhan Ram Tripathi meditated on an individual struggle against forces that made personal freedom subservient to the societal good. Mohandas Gandhi unshackled the individual and shaped the collective. Ravi Shankar Maharaj made sure we didn't forget the ones left behind. Uttam Parmar, Yosef Mekwan, and Sonal Shukla forced us to look at those being ignored. And it was Kanhaiya Lal Munshi who looked at the past and made many of us believe that that was the future. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And whatever you read just now, I would say that in the beginning, when you said you're going to talk about good, bad, and ugly about the Gujaratis, and I think more or less whatever we got the glimpses out of your whatever you said today, I believe it will definitely include the plurality. And main thing, last part I loved the most when you talked about Asmita, which is like without naming the names or saying anything about what's going on today in Gujarat, in India, or people outside India, but we still hold those thoughts in our minds. I believe this was a very, very important thing. And this book of yours, I'm sure everybody is going to love it, because we want to learn more about, because we all think that we know who we are, but I think we don't know who we are. And if we will know that who we are, or if we try to know that, it will open up our minds and it will help us and the society. So we really thank you very much, Swar-Akshar. On behalf of Swar-Akshar, we would say it was a great talk. And we will now open, if you permit us, if you have some time, we can open for questions. So friends, we are opening the gallery, and as always, please raise your hand or maybe virtual hand, and you will be invited to talk. At that time, you can unmute and keep the questions short. Thank you.
Guinea Ben.
સૌથી પહેલા તો નીતાબેન શૈલેષભાઈ થેન્ક યુ સલીલભાઈ જોડે કનેક્ટ કરી આપવા માટે. અને નીતાબેન, મને તમારો સવાલ બહુ જ ગમ્યો કે ગુજરાતી વોટ ઇઝ રિલિજિયન, લાઈક શું છે. અને સલીલભાઈ એનો સરસ એવો બ્રોડ મતલબ સમજાયો. સલીલભાઈ, તમે આ 7 વર્ષનો યજ્ઞ કર્યો, આ સવાલ તમારા માટે છે. તો આખા આ 7 વર્ષના આ યજ્ઞને અંતે તમને લેખક તરીકે તો સંતોષ થયો જ હશે, પણ ગુજરાતી તરીકે તમને શું થયું એ મને કહો. થેન્ક યુ.
હા, તો આપણે જો અત્યારે એટલી ડિવાઇડેડ થઈ ગયું. Shall I answer in Gujarati or English? I'm just curious.
The choice is yours.
Well, I'm happy to do either, but I just want to know, I'm looking through, if everybody is Gujarati, I'm happy to speak in Gujarati, but if not...
Sorry, Salil, for 2 reasons, we try to keep it in English, because as we put it on YouTube, and we don't know who would visit. So
Sure. So I'll keep it in English. Basically, we live in a very divided time, right? So people see the idea of Gujarati or even Indianness for them in a very Manichaean way, that it's good or evil. So those who like Gujarati want no criticism, and those who don't like want no praise either. I mean, you can see that, when people who are supporting the current government in India, you see even something slightly critical, you are called a Gujarati phobe or a Hindu phobe is a way, because two of the most important politicians and two of the most important business people today in India happen to be Gujaratis. So that's what happened. At the same time, if you criticize and if you say something positive about them, the amount of abuse that comes is also semi-literate. I mean, to give one example, I mean, one of the greatest Gujarati architects of all time was Balkrishna Doshi, who won the Pritzker Prize some years ago. New Yorker had a big profile about him. He has worked with Le Corbusier and he's done superb work on low-cost housing and so on. Now, he was involved with some of the designing work with the architect Bimal Patel, not for what happened in the parliament, but other projects of his. And the amount of abuse that Patel got over the leaking roof in parliament, that's a different story. I don't want to get into that. But people also started abusing Doshi, who had died by that. And I think this is what happened, that if you have a Gujarati name, if you dislike the current dispensation, you want to hate everything that might be, and I think so too, which is a long way of saying that I'm critical of the current setup, political setup in India, which is no secret, but I found so many positive and affirmative stories that I just feel that, you know, there's good and bad and it's not like in a banal Gandhian way that I'm saying it, but, you know, I have a chapter called Reasons for Hope towards the end, where I've written about Hindus who went out of the way to save Muslim lives after 2002 and during 2002. And it's not just the Hindu police officer and the Hindu neighbor from South India, which are two stories, but two of them are actually RSS workers. One was a BJP worker, and they did it. And one of the guys said that, look, this talk of Hindu Muslims okay for elections, but you cannot kill people. And I'm going to make sure. And this man had his two ambulances, and because the children could not go to school and he was in a Muslim area, he let the children go in his ambulance to the school every day. And the people, the rioters, didn't know that these were actually Muslim children going to school and back. So there are some amazing stories of humanity that I have seen. And that doesn't mean that everybody is good and everybody is bad, but there are these complexities. That's one major lesson I have learned from the book.
Thank you. I think Meeta is next, followed by Priyanka. Meeta Ben, you can unmute. Yeah, thank you. Meeta Ben, tomorrow.
Meeta Mewada from Bombay. And today I really feel very proud that I am Gujarati. And my question is, what is one prominent quality? Yeah. અવાજ નથી આવતો?
પાછળ થઈ ગયું બરોબર, પ્રશ્ન પૂરો કરો.
અવાજ નથી આવતો? Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can
Yeah.
complete your question or repeat it.
What is the one prominent quality that makes Gujarat? Yeah. What is the one prominent quality that makes Gujarat?
From what I understood, your question is one prominent quality. It's always very hard to pick one quality because others would have that quality too, right? Initially, when I was working, I described Gujaratis to Geeta Peramal, who was a very well-known business historian. She said, Salil, everything you say also applies to Marwadis that you are saying. So I wouldn't want to say that. What I would say that there are certain qualities that do apply to Gujaratis, but may apply to other. And I think one that does apply to Gujaratis, I think, is being practical and pragmatic, and which has both positive and negative virtues. Positive virtues that, you know, we are able to compartmentalize and focus on the problem at hand. And the negative virtue is that means, you know, we think that means are not important and ends are enough. So yeah, again, it's quality, but whether it's positive or negative depends on what you make of it.
I think it's Priyanka Pathak next.
Yeah, hi. This was a lovely session and very illuminating. Salil, congratulations on the book. It's as wonderfully complex.
Read it first. There's still time for that.
I cannot wait. but everything that you've read speaks of the complexity that you have explored in the book. And that's what really is a hallmark of any great journalist. So I can already see the makings of this book making waves in India and getting translated into Gujarati for sure. I'm hoping that you do it soon because I can imagine most of Gujarat clamoring to know a little bit more about our roots. Even if you live in Gujarat, there is so much that we don't know about the layered history and this nuance that I'm certain it's going to be a huge success.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the literary people that you've explored, and if there was any standout writer, author, poet who you think hasn't got his due in history.
That's very interesting. You have me stumped. But I would probably want us all to look more at women writers, because I've written about Kundanika Kapadia and Varsha Adalja and Ila Arab Mehta, but there's very little we know about the past. So I'm not able to give you a precise name, but Govardhan Ram Tripathi, when he was the president of the Sahitya Parishad, and he had actually written an essay about Gujarati writers, and he had given a breakup, community-wise. And I think he had about 100 odd names, and Amrut Bhai might know the exact number. I think it was 107 names he came up with. And he said, including 7 women or 6 women. So I think there are a lot of under-examined and under-known writers that we haven't. And Dalit writing is another great area there. But about which, someone whose book I'm looking forward to, because I've only read some of his short stories, is Nazir Mansoori, because he has written a brilliant story about a whale. But he has been writing, and I know about this because of Ashwini Hemang Bhai actually wrote about him in a piece he wrote in Print or Scroll or somewhere. But he's writing a long book which might be even bigger than Marcel Proust's, In Search of Lost Time.
Wow.
Thousands of pages. So Runanubandh, right? That's the name, right? Someone was saying.
Ooh,
Yeah.
what a beautiful title.
Yeah, I think that's the name of the novel. I'm not sure. અત્યારે મને યાદ નથી આવતું, but that's a novel I'm looking forward to reading, because it's about a Kharwao and Nakudao, and it's about the coastal fishing community.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Did you read Kanhaiялal Munshi's book on Jai Somnath and all of that as well?
I've read at school,
School books.
Gujarati man. And then when I was writing it, I read Rita's introductions in the English, because Rita has gone into the Asmita question very well. Rita and Abhijit in their translation.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That's all from me.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka.
Priyanka has written a book on Somnath, by the way, huh? So you should all look for that. I'm going to, now that I've finished mine, I'm going to read yours. Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, can't wait to hear what you think.
Great. Thank you, Priyanka. Next is Surendra Bhai, then Devang, and then there is a gentleman with initials JKV. Surendra Bhai.
Haji, thank you, Shailesh Bhai, Nita Ben. Salil Bhai, I joined midway a little. Sorry, I've done some major dental work. I may have a little difficulty speaking because I joined late as a result of a passcode problem. My first question is, why is the whole thing taking place in English? Can you please tell me?
You mean this conversation?
Ji, yes.
No, both Siddha and Uttar, Shailesh Bhai કહ્યું તેમ કે once it goes on YouTube, it will be watched by people who are not Gujaratis.
Yes.
And that's the
Okay.
reason. Yeah.
Okay.
But I was very happy to conduct the entire conversation in Gujarati.
Right. Okay. Thanks
Surendra
for
Bhai,
that.
sorry to interrupt. Also, the book is in English too. So there are multiple factors and the reasons to go beyond Gujarati speaking people.
Thanks.
Sorry.
That explains it all. Thanks very much. So my curiosity has been satisfied about that. And all I can say is, I don't have much to ask. All I have to say is, I compliment Salil Bhai because all that he said displays his deep study about all the topics that he has covered. And I apologize for my little problem. I wish I was able to
Oh, no,
talk
you're
a
very
little.
clear. You're sounding
Thank you
very
so
clear.
much. Yeah.
And I
Okay.
hope with this, your dental problem is over. Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope so sooner than later.
Yeah.
Salil bhai, again, because I joined late, can you please tell me your background as quickly as you can? Because I don't want to take too much time, and how you are occupied currently.
No,
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was born in Bombay,
Mhm.
studied first degree in Bombay, then I went to America for my MBA.
Mhm.
Then I went back to India as a journalist. Then I lived in
Mhm.
Singapore and Hong Kong for
Mhm.
8 years as a journalist. Then I moved to London. I was in London for 20 years, where I worked human rights and journalism. And now
Mhm.
it's a human rights think tank. I live in New York for the last 5.5 years and
Mhm.
involved with a lot of free speech organizations, and I write books and journalism.
Thanks very much, Salil bhai. Thanks very much. Nita ben and Shailesh bhai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Haji.
Devan?
I'm not surprised about somebody commenting about Tata. You know, it is surprising to me that even many Gujaratis are not aware who the Parsis are.
Yeah.
And if anybody is going to, keep the Gujarati, language alive, that would be Parsis, because no matter where they go, they have, one unwritten rule that I believe is in sync with the treaty they made with the king of Sanjam, that always speak Gujarati in their home.
Yeah.
So, wherever they live, around the globe, their kids also learn Gujarati very well.
No,
They speak, they have.
No, and this poem which everybody knows, Jaja was a Gujarati, Tyan Sadakal Gujarat, that is Khabardar, and that's a Parsi poet. And, I mean, the finest and the funniest and liveliest theater we know of is Parsi Gujarati comedies.
So true. So true. Thank you. JKV. Need to unmute. You need to unmute.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, મારું નામ જયેશ વોરા છે અને obviously મારો સવાલ સલીલભાઈને છે કે is there a correlation between a political leader, a political stalwart on the Indian scene, જેમ કે મહાત્મા ગાંધી, મોરારજી દેસાઈ અને હવે નરેન્દ્ર મોદી, જેના દરમિયાન ગુજરાત વધારે પોલિટિકલ થઈ જાય છે? Because in the intervening period, let's say between Gandhiji and Morarji Desai, there was not too much of political sort of activism. So are we led by leaders politically? આપણે વધારે પોલિટિકલ થઈ જાય છે? That is one question. અને જે અત્યારનું, for a lack of better word, જે અત્યારે radicalize થઈ ગયું છે politics, એનું પાછળનું કારણ શું છે કે પહેલેથી જ આપણે આવા હતા?
Both are very good questions. So the first question was actually what my editor asked me, that, and he wanted me to seek an answer. And I spoke to Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who's one of India's leading political scientists. And he made a very interesting point that both Gandhi and Sardar Patel, two very prominent Gujarati politicians, they transcended Gujarat very quickly. So India never saw them as Gujarati leaders. Right? I mean, Sardar Patel, bhale Bardoli and Borsad, Satyagraha kare, but they were never seen as, he was never seen as only a Gujarati, or Gandhi as only a Gujarati. They made, Morarji Desai did play a prominent role nationally, and he was always important in Gujarat, but he was Prime Minister very briefly, 2 years and 8 months or 7 months or something like that. Modi is different because he's not only able to, he has not only become Indian because of his background in RSS and being a Hindu pracharak and so on, but he has brought Gujarat with him, and both in the positive and the negative senses. So the positive sense could be, this whole idea about being self-reliant and entrepreneurial and building infrastructure and all that. And the negative part could be, keeping a bureaucracy which is, very personally beholden to him and loyal to him. So, and that actually has created more acute polarization in my personal view, that those who are Gujarati feel very proud of it, and you can't have a debate about it. And if you try to have it, it becomes fairly vicious. People leave family Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups and and friendships get broken. But if you're and at the same time, if you are outsider, you find it very hard to see the positive. So, I mean, this Manichaean divide that has happened is a product of today's politics, the way it is played out, and which I see in the long run as problematic. And therefore, when you the second part of question, that where does this go? But I mean, the interesting part is that, you know, again, somebody who I've interviewed in the book, and she's a neuroscientist, Muslim Gujarati neuroscientist who lives in Sweden. And she put it to me that, you know, you can't keep saying that 1984 riots happened because of Rajiv Gandhi or Narasimha Rao, or that 2002 happened because of only Narendra Modi or something like that. We are all complicit in it. And that complicity is something we have to understand better. That what I find very fascinating, I do know people who admire both Gandhi and Modi, and I don't know how it's possible to do that. I genuinely, it's a genuine question. I mean, I'm not trying to be provocative here, but there's a case in New Zealand that there was a man who was a justice of peace, and he was a Gujarati man, and he was posting extremely anti-Muslim things on his Facebook page while he was garlanding, you know, Mahatma Gandhi, and then finally he was removed. The government removed him from being a justice. And he was confused that why is it that when I like Gandhiji so much that I'm being removed? But the fact that there was a dissonance there was something he was not able. So I think that battle is internal within every Gujarati. And I mean, I've tried to give enough examples of Hindu-Muslim marriages, Hindus looking after Muslims, Muslims looking after Hindus, Muslims forgiving. See, one of the things about 2002 that's interesting is that people say that it's time to move on, let's forgive and forget. But usually, who is doing that talking? It's usually Hindus who are saying that. I'm yet to hear many Muslims saying that let's forgive and, you know, move on. I mean, some of them are doing it because they've given a faith in the judicial system. That's not the solution we want. If you really want an integrated community and society, then we have to try to figure out what it was that Gandhi wanted to create in his ashrams, and, you know, where everybody was an equal and so on. So, I mean, I don't want to again sound like one of these speaking about Gandhi's pieties and homilies, but and he was not a perfect man. I mean, nobody is a perfect person, but there's a lot to learn from him, and Gujaratis have to rediscover him, just as India has to rediscover him.
Thank you.
If I'm allowed one more question, Salil Bhai, is there going to be a difference in the content between the international edition and the Asian subcontinent edition?
I don't know, because Atyare, there's only an Asian one. I think international one, probably I'll have to explain some of the background. I'll have to remove some of the history, because I've really gone into the detailed history of Muhammad Begado and Somnath and destruction. And I think some of that I'll have to compress a little. I may have to expand the part about the diaspora, because the diaspora was a much larger section, and then it has been it is you know, put differently. But I think I've probably, you know, I mean, if it's a British edition, they will probably say, can you tell us more about Gujaratis in Leicester? For example, right now there are only 2 or 3 pages on it, and they might want something longer on that. So it may happen. It's very hard to tell just now, but it might be that the 2 editions will look different. But I don't know how. That depends on once some publisher takes it up abroad.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Salil Bhai.
Thank you, Jay. Before I go over to Mehul, who has raised the hand, I have a couple of messages that I'll read through. Shilpa has written, Salil, I joined this group call the first time. Thanks for sending me this link. I'll request them to add me in the future discussions. And now about your talk, superb. I'm so glad I got the glimpse of the book, the Asmita you talked about. Everything you said fits so well, even to the Marathi community I belong to, and I'm sure it does to many others all across the world. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts. Shilpaji, I have put my contact info. You can send me your info and I'll add it to our group. And then Hasu Patel says, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Looking forward to reading the book. So you have a reader ready to read the book. So, and Devang writes, there's a big difference in forgiving, forgetting. Both words are not synonymous. And we go to the next question. Mehul, you're on.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. At the first glimpse, I would like to say it is very welcoming to know the advent of such a book. So congrats to Salil Bhai for writing it and putting all the efforts into it, and to Swar-Akshar for introducing us to it. What I would like to say is today's discussion is very well timed because yesterday was Vishwa Gujarati Divas and today's meeting is explaining about a book which is explaining about Gujaratis all over the world. So nicely timed discussion, I would like to say to the organizers. Now to Salil Bhai, you have mentioned about various aspects of Gujaratis, and this book undoubtedly will bring lot of information to the people all over who want to know about Gujaratis. What I would like to ask you is, being candid and authentic in your reviews of various aspects, what are you trying to ensure that the book at the end when people read it are going to leave a positive impression about the community, or that we are pragmatic, we are ready to compromise with everything, and we would like to move along to be successful in so-called monetary aspects of life?
Yeah, so it is true that, monetary aspect is important and it is a prosperous community, but as the book will show, there is extreme poverty also, and inequality and disparity. And I just want, I know it doesn't sound like a great objective. I just want to put out that, we all know cliches about the community, and it's more complicated than that. And there's good and bad everywhere, just as there is good and bad in every one of us. And Gujaratis are no exception, but don't fall for the received wisdom that they are like this or like that, because for every, Niraj Chaudhary had once said, I think in the context of Indians, that in India, even exceptions run into millions. And I think Gujaratis are somewhat like that, when you're 7 or 8 crore people around the world, 70 million. So yeah, there is going to be an exceptional number, which will also be very, very large. And that's going to make us look at it differently. So I think if people start looking at Gujaratis differently and put their preconceptions aside, that itself will be quite an achievement. Yeah.
Okay, and just one more question, not a question, but two aspects which I have read along, and I'm sure you would have collected within your works, or you may be trying to put into the book. One aspect is what I had read is after Akbar had attacked Gujarat and there was lot of Islamization coming into Gujarat. I know that was a period later than Muhammad Begda. But at that time, Gujarati businessmen had went all the way to Akbar's court in Agra and not plead, but make up business deals with them such that the Gujarati community would survive. I'm not sure the authenticity of this information, but if you have stumbled upon it during your study and work, or if you would like to put it. And the second thing, which is also an interesting fact, that the first Asian or a non-white person to be selected to the British Parliament was Dadabhai Nauroji, who is also a Gujarati. Okay, yeah, thanks. So, yeah.
The first three, in fact, one from Conservatives, one from Liberal, and one from Labour, were all Parsis. Shapurji Saklatwala was the Labour, Mancherji Bhavanagri was the Conservative, and Dadabhai was Liberal. So the first three non-whites to be elected to Parliament were all Parsis and Gujaratis. Yeah.
And about the Gujarati trade delegation with Akbar's court.
Yeah, no, so it's not only Akbar. There have been many instances where two or three things have happened. Either there has been some cleverness. So Vastupal and Tejpal, when they were prominent in Gujarat, they used to know how to manipulate the sultans of Delhi. And there's a very cute story about them manipulating and deceiving the Sultan about a fake raid on the Sultan's mother who was going to the Hajj from one of the Gujarat port, and protecting her to get trade concessions from the Sultans of Delhi. Shantidas Zaveri and others, those who were, and Virji Vora, who was a very prominent trader in Surat, they've all done deals to keep commerce and trade moving, to strike a deal with them. And in fact, if you go to Palanpur, most of the Nawabs were Muslim, but their entire treasury was run and administered by Jains at that time. And that's how they became prominent in the jewelry trade. And so that explains the whole trade. So I think there is a lot, this ability of the Gujarati trader, whether it's Jain or a Vaniya or Hindu, to strike a deal and a relationship with whoever is in power. A lot of them actually, left Gujarat and came to Bombay was because, the Marathas who replaced the Sultan, they were very usurious and they were charging very, very stiff taxes. And so the British opened up. So the Kapols and Lohanas and Bhatiyas and Parsis, Memons and Bohras, they all started coming, and they built Bombay after that. So this ability of keeping the king in good humor, play the role of the Mahajan and, be helping out, but keeping એક કચ્છી ભાઈ હતા જેનું મળેલો મસ્કતમાં એમણે મેં આપણે તો નીચી મુંડી રાખવાની અને બે પૈસો કમાવો અને જેને જે લેવું એ લઈ જાય. We need to work, keep our heads down, earn our two rupees or $2 and keep the government in power at bay. My school teacher used to get જેનો રાજા વેપારી એક પ્રજા ભિખારી is the way he had put it. That when the king tries to do business, that system falls apart. So to keep the two apart and keep the king happy, pay taxes and keep him away, so that you can keep doing your own. That's again part of that diplomacy and practicality that comes through repeatedly in Gujarat history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I don't see any questions coming. Salil bhai, thank you very much. I know we could go on, and we kept even our questions out of the discussion, that because we wanted the audience and our friends to ask the questions. So it's been enlightening session. I would say one of the best sessions about Gujaratis. I think this is the one of the best ones. And for our friends here, I'd like to let you know those
एक fellow question पूछी सका है?
Ashish bhai, go ahead.
I just want to ask you, when is the book going to be available? मैं तने पूछी आ question અને क्या મળશે? Yeah.
It will be out in India in early to mid-November, but beyond that, I don't know yet. Yeah.
Okay, and it's going to be a book version or online version?
No, it's a book. I mean, there may be a Kindle version, but I don't know. That's
Okay,
but it's
no problem.
it's a hardbound proper book. Yeah.
November માં. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
ખૂબ
Thank
મજા આવી સલીલ ભાઈ.
Ashish bhai, that was a good question too. I thought that was on our list, but anyway, thank you very much for keeping us on track. And to our friends and those who have been with us, you might have seen our posts regarding our dabbling into occasional sessions on moving image. Next Sunday, 1st of September, we'll be having the team, including director Anamika Haksar of the film Ghode Ko Jalebi Khilane Le Ja Riya Hoon. The links and everything about the film, it's available on Good Show app, etc., is available on my Facebook page. And if you want to join, those who don't have my phone number, I put it in the chat here. It's 647-988-4620. Send me your contact info. We'll send it over to you. And again, thank you very much, Amrit bhai. Thank you very much for being such a great supporter to us. And Salil bhai, one more time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.